Okay.
I want to welcome you to Ignite the Fire. Tonight we have a wonderful program planned for you, and our very first guest is the head of the Counter Jade Helm group for the state of Texas, and he's going to talk to us about Counter Jade Helm here in Texas, as well as Arizona, New Mexico, California, Colorado, and Louisiana as well. So please welcome Eric Johnston, if you would. Well, it's good to have you with me. So let's start with this. What was it that got you interested in participating in this and wanting to be a part of the Counter Jade Helm?
I was contacted by the National Director, Pete Lantieri, out of Arizona. And he said, you know, there's a military exercise starting in a couple months, and they're focusing on your state. Okay, there's been military exercises before. He said, the really interesting thing is, and Pete is a retired Marine, he said, they have two different playbooks. One that they're telling the general public, one that they're telling the special operations community.
Okay.
So I went to a meeting in March up in Bastrop with about 700 other people, and we watched a Lieutenant Colonel, Mark Lastoria, speak to us about Jade Helm. And this is exactly what we're going to do. And 5 minutes later, he would change everything that he was doing to a new scenario. And it got my attention. I might not necessarily be able to track the special operations community myself, but with help, and we currently have 368 members in Texas who are actively following these folks around, we can try to get a handle on what they're doing, put the rumors to bed.
Well, and give people a sense of security as to what's going on. I know that a lot of us had concerns with regards to where this might be headed and what might be going on.
Absolutely.
What were some of the things that you were looking for as you guys began the operation?
Well, they said in the very beginning it was going to be an information gathering and infiltration exercise. About 8 minutes into the dissertation, he then said that all soldiers were going to be in full military uniform with a large orange armband on their left sleeve. I don't know how many of y'all have tried to sneak into Walmart, but if you're doing it in full uniform and an orange armband, somebody's going to see you. It just didn't make sense.
Okay.
They have so many facilities across the U.S. where they could practice these specific skills, these towns that they have built where they can practice these skills and never have to interfere with day-to-day activities.
And so now we're into this. We're a little over 30 days into the process. Over the course of the last 30 days, what are some of the things that you've observed?
Well, there's been a number of things. How many folks watched KXAN last night? Nobody? I'm the only one that watches the news. They interviewed Colonel Lastoria, and he allowed a reporter to come out to the base in San Antonio to witness the big airdrop that they have been postponing week by week. The 82nd Airborne was going to parachute onto the base, begin to engage some targets, practicing night maneuvers.
Okay.
They canceled it, and they have the reporter in the field. They're looking at the aircraft coming in. Suddenly the aircraft depart. They canceled the entire maneuver. 3 hours later, once the reporter left, they dropped the 82nd Airborne into the camp. So, you know, they have preached from the beginning that there would never be any coverage by the mainstream media of any of the events going on. And once again, they proved it.
What kind of message does that send to you? What kind of message, when Pete gets that kind of information, how does that process through?
Well, quite simply, it's not as transparent as it should be. Now, I understand there are quite a few detractors that say the average American citizen does not need to know what the military is doing. And I can agree with them on that. These gentlemen are highly trained, they're doing their job. But when you take that into the public eye, when you take over an area of Texas like Bastrop or Junction or Big Spring, and now you're operating in the public eye, the public needs a little more information. How would you react if you were coming into 7-Eleven at Bastrop and saw 20 men with rifles?
You're going to be a little bit taken aback by it.
Absolutely.
Depending on how they're geared out
How
as
they
well.
geared out? Are they all in fatigues with rank and insignia? Or are they in blue jeans looking around nervously with a rifle on their shoulder?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's been a couple of different things that we've cited. One of them that I mentioned on the program was the Pavehawks that came over. That had a number. How many of y'all were exposed to, there were 3 Pavehawks that flew over Kerrville about 10 days ago?
About 10 days ago.
About 10 days ago. Did any of y'all see that?
1:30 in the afternoon, three large black military helicopters.
Okay.
And I actually had a discussion regarding that. It took a number of days to find out what they were doing, and you found out as well.
Yes.
They were actually going to Junction to perform a search and rescue on a soldier who had become lost, snake bitten, and his radio died. That's a series of bad breaks.
What I got directly from someone who had contacted the base where those choppers flew out of, one of the operations they're running is called SEER, which is
Survive, evade,
yes,
rescue,
and so SEER programs are run. I actually went to high school with a guy when I was in the Air Force. We reconnected and it turned out that he was one of the instructors. There's a SEER base in the state of Washington where they actually take, and it's preparation for prisoner of war. That's really what it's about. It's to prepare our guys for what it may look like if you become a prisoner of war. How do you escape? How do you survive? What do you do? They're running some of those same kinds of operations because of the landscape that exists here in this hill country and in some of the areas around here with the dry, arid desert areas. They had a particular soldier who was out, and his job that he was on was to have escaped from another group of soldiers that were acting as though they were the enemy holding him prisoner. And he was supposed to escape, and he was supposed to evade, and then ultimately he was supposed to rejoin. As he was out doing that, he ended up getting snake bit. And the last contact that they had had with him was that he'd been bit by a snake. His radio subsequently died. Those 3 Pavehawks were actually in a practice maneuver, and they were going to be flying out to rendezvous with a group, because there is a group of Jade Helm that is out in Junction. They received a phone call. They flew out of San Antonio, got a phone call that there was a missing soldier that had gone down with a snake bite. They diverted their course and went out to actually perform a real live search and rescue. My understanding is that they did find that soldier and they were able to recover him. He was severely dehydrated, but I believe the last report that I got is that he is going to be okay.
But the internet, which is a wonderful breeding ground, immediately exploded here in the general area. They're landing at Mooney. They're here to take over. Everybody get your rifles, meet at the gates of Shriner Airfield. We have to stop them now. No, they were here for a specific purpose.
Now, there was another one that you told me about on the phone when we talked on the radio, but I decided not to bring that forward. So
Correct.
Why don't you share that story?
There's a couple of gentlemen in the Junction area who have been watching the soldiers that are out there. There's a company of about 18 that have been performing their maneuvers out there in the Junction area. And the odd thing they've noticed over the last 8 days, 3 to 4 times at night, they're launching drones. The drones fly around the camp and then take off due south. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the arid wasteland that is Junction, due south is Mexico. There was one incident of a drone leaving Bastrop that was also headed due south. Now there's a lot more due south of Bastrop, but there has been discussion and consternation. The soldiers that are set up in place, Bastrop, Junction, Deming, New Mexico, Douglas, Tucson. If you look at a map of the United States, they're looking at between a 70 and 125 mile line between Mexico and the United States. They're covering that area, and they seem to be performing more and more maneuvers to the south.
Now, one of the things that came up early on in this is that this was the 7th. What can you tell me about that?
There was discussion that this was the 7th group of the Special Forces. They are the primary members of this action. There are some members of the United States Marine Corps, some members of the SEALs. There was one Coast Guard element that was to be involved when they were in the Victoria area. Of course, they're not releasing exact numbers of who's coming and what times.
That's one of the other things that I think plays into some of the misconceptions and concerns is what you're saying about precise numbers and what have you. I would conjecture that that's one of the mistakes that I believe that our current administration has continued to make, and that is that they consistently tell the enemy the size of our force, and even to the point of saying where that force may or may not be striking. So in that spirit, is it kind of in line then that they're going to be performing some of these operations trying not to put out as much information?
It is in line, but then again, they have facilities even here in South Texas.
Okay.
Camp Swift, Camp Bullis. There are thousands of acres there. Why did they suddenly need to move these activities directly into the public's scope? Citizens of Bastrop, we may be driving through town. You'll see a helicopter flying overhead these 3 nights. You may or may not hear gunfire. Why was there a need to do that when there was a facility, military facility, 9 miles away?
And so in the investigating of that, what have you gleaned some information regarding that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
In the beginning, in the Bastrop area, we began to get reports from the Caddo Lake area of East Texas that soldiers had been seen moving in on inflatable boats coming from Louisiana. When the initial assessment was made that it was an infiltration exercise, we had about 40 people in the area that actually followed them from Caddo Lake into Caldwell, lost them, and then found them again in College Station, and lost them again about 12 miles from Camp Swift. If you've ever driven those areas, those back roads back there, it's perfect terrain for doing infiltrations. Waterways, swamps, heavy trees, vegetation.
So for the purpose of practicing and preparation.
Absolutely. They picked a wonderful spot.
What about the rumors that we've heard about issues at the southern border? And I think it's interesting. I believe it was Ben Carson that went up on a helicopter and did a tour. We'd had information from the Texas Border Volunteers saying that we basically were in danger as far up as 70 to 100 miles from the border.
Of basically giving that terrain up.
Correct.
They saw scout placements 75, 80, 90 miles inside United States territory of cartel smugglers. They had a little hillside, had it set up, had all their equipment. They were flying over with Dr. Carson, and they'd watch these guys go right into little holes in the rock, grab all their stuff, disappear. Why are they 100 miles inside of our border and Washington's not doing anything to stop it?
Do you believe that's part of what the problem, what the reason that these particular soldiers are in place?
I do. The gentleman in Arizona, Beats team, believe it as well. The couple fellows that we have in the Deming area believe that. The more you start to look at the map, you see just a dividing line going along the south of the United States, as if perhaps these guys in Junction are setting up a listening post. Rather than doing what they said they would do, they have a plan to set up a listening post and supersede the Border Patrol, if you will. Pay attention to the traffic coming over, doing the job that the guys from the Border Patrol are now being prevented from doing. All along the border, you're seeing that.
I'm going to ask, let's see, Mike, would you help me for just a minute? Grab that red mic, if you would. And, yeah, Matt, grab we got a green one back there? We're going to take a couple questions.
All right.
As we kind of wind down our session. I want to give you all an opportunity to ask some questions, and Eric's going to answer them to the best of his ability. So
I'll put a small caveat on that. If you're asking me about the Bluebell ice cream trucks being used to move bodies for FEMA, if you're asking about the asteroid that's coming on September the 15th, I don't have any information on those theories. The Walmart concentration camps, to date, knock wood, we have never found any reasonable belief in any of these activities. Guard towers being built on shopping malls. There was a report of portable checkpoints being set up on highways and demanding that U.S. citizens turn over their paperwork. And it's called the Border Patrol, and they're south of here. They're doing their job. All right.
Yes. Chaplain Lewis Williams made a comment in his DVD pertaining to preparing for September 15th that the Jade people were probably not all American soldiers. Is there any truth to foreign troops on our soil?
Well, there's actually a couple of points to that. I was the one who originally brought that question to Colonel Astoria in Bastrop. I said, so this is United States troops only, no foreign nationals. And he said, yes, no foreign nationals would be functioning with this operation. We're also protected with Passe Comitatus that outside forces cannot come onto United States soil and enforce rules and regulations. There's a huge scare on the internet right now because President Obama is in Mexico and he's going to go along with the UN arms treaty that's being signed in Mexico. We are not a signatory to that because it's never been ratified by the Congress. So I do not look for blue helmets come marching down Sidney Baker. If they do, that's a beautiful, shiny target. I don't think it will happen.
Steve?
The governor said that the National Guard was going to monitor the operations. Where do they fit into what's going on? And are we getting any information from them?
Well, I can show you the federal government at work again. They picked 2 soldiers at Camp Mabry in Austin. The people in Bastrop are feeding a report once a day to these 2 soldiers at Camp Mabry who take that report and give it to Governor Abbott.
Oh my gosh.
What's in the report? Okay, we did this, 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 and this today. Tell them we did this and this. And those guys dutifully go up to Governor Abbott and say, well, they cleaned weapons and they washed a vehicle. There's no, not quite sure what the word I'm looking for here is, but accountability. We need to have the military, our National Guard. We need to have reporters. We have embedded reporters with military units in heavy fire zones. Why can there not be a reporter in Bastrop? But they have refused to allow it.
Go ahead.
I have an email from a friend of mine who's ex-military, he was actually a chopper pilot, a chopper medic in Nam. He's coming back from Manitoba, and between Flagstaff and Las Vegas, where he was going, he passed 2 convoys, 20 trucks, 2 ambulances, and military ambulances each. And he passed another one about 40 minutes later, also 20. Makes a total of 40 ambulances. Why would they be going that way? He said that you'd not see that many in a hot war zone.
one of the largest production facilities for military vehicles is just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. I-40 is a huge corridor to move vehicles.
Going to Las Vegas.
Okay. We have been moving, I say we, the United States has been moving equipment back into the Thousand Palms area. There are a number of vehicles, especially because of a report I received last week about FEMA vehicles on McClellan Air Force Base, which has been decommissioned. However, that base is so toxic from all of the radium and all of the radioactive testing that's been done. To this day, they're still moving military vehicles into McClellan. Large convoys without soldiers attached to them, it's been our belief thus far, every time we've tracked one, it's simply a shipment of vehicles moving one position or another.
Okay, one more question. Is there any rumor, any truth to the rumor about the abandoned prison, private prison, somewhere between Bastrop and Austin area, that there's about 600 UN vehicles in it?
I've lived in Austin for 12 years. I never found that prison.
I found pictures of it that were sent to me.
Pictures from Bastrop or just?
That showed about 600 vehicles in behind it. They wanted to come, can't be wire and so forth.
I would love to see that when we break.
I'll show it to you.
Okay, please.
My question's in reference to the Arms Trade Treaty. John Kerry has said that they're done trying to get treaties past Congress. So they're down in Mexico right now trying to make a bunch of presidential executive type agreements with their other world bureaucrats. My question is if they're not going to come in with the blue helmeted types or use federal agents to go after guns, are they going to, what are the nuts and bolts? Are they going to harass gun owners with legal actions or, you know, taxation on your weapons or whatever you have?
They already are. Every time you watch President Obama give a speech, the two words you hear come out of his mouth are gun control.
Yeah.
We had a terrible incident occur yesterday where two white reporters were killed by a black man. Rather than there being riots, the White House demanding that we move troops in and assist and heal the unrest, he took the podium and said the problem lies with guns. And I can see that. I have a faulty shotgun at home. It has sat by my front door for almost a year, and it hasn't killed anybody. I really want to return it because it's not killing people. The government tells me that our weapons are killing our citizens. The end is, it's our citizens killing our citizens. He is constantly asking for gun control. He's working now with the UN to try to get the UN to do it. If he can get the UN to pass a global arms trade agreement, then he will try to backdoor that right past Congress. That's when we get nervous. That's when we'll see the UN coming in and say,
A letter from Brussels or something like that saying, you got to.
absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 30 days to register your guns at your local federal bureau of ATF.
All right, last two questions.
In my old days, I used to be in the J7 at the Pentagon, working training and education. And we used to do these mass casualty exercises that was all National Guard only. Do you think we've kind of run through the gamut of what we could do with that? We've trained the people, had lots of turnover 10 times. Do you think this is the next escalation for the active duty to try first, which is a continuation of what we did before, working with civil agencies, casualty contamination, mass casualty response, and this is just the active duty trying to figure out what's next in that world?
It's actually interesting that you bring that up because the only civil agency that has become part of this is FEMA. They're working directly with Special Operations Command. So this goes back, you remember, I don't know how many other people might remember, Rex 84, the readiness exercises in the mid-80s. This is a new evolution, we think of this. They're readying themselves for something. And I hate to sound so vague because we don't have a pipeline into the federal government to call up and say, hey, what exactly are you doing?
So they figure it out, will they now come back and now the Guard will become part of it?
I believe they will, especially if this is an action that they're looking due south. If they're expecting, God forbid, an invasion from the south, they will then come along. They can take 200 soldiers that they had in Texas and begin training the Texas National Guard. 85 soldiers in New Mexico, begin training the New Mexico State Guard, and be able to start rolling them onto the borders while we begin moving government troops down.
Last question.
In answer to something Bill said about, there is a production facility, I believe, right out of Katy, and a lot of that's going towards, out I-10 towards Vegas, out that direction. But the question is, do you know if they're using like Randolph or Ellington?
I have not heard of anything either at Ellington or Randolph. There was discussion because of the number of vehicles at McClellan Air Force Base, which has now been decommissioned, the number of FEMA vehicles, that it was becoming a staging point. There was discussion of a large staging point just outside of Junction, and come to find out that large staging facility was 2 Humvees and a water tender. So more often than not, and not to discredit what this young man had over here, because I want to see these pictures, more often than not, we are getting reports from people, oh my God, there was 2 tanks on a flatbed going down I-10 towards El Paso. And we start getting on the radios. We have a listing of ham radio operators in all the states that we have actions being taken in. And we start following the vehicles. There was 15 vehicles that went to Galveston about a month ago. Everybody got wound up. I had a friend of mine in Galveston watch the vehicles get on a Panamanian freighter. They were being sold to Central or South America. Immediately the discussion became, well, the vehicles are going down, going through the Panama Canal, and they're going to bring them right back to the U.S. Not cost efficient. But no, other than that, we have not seen any large scale. There's a facility just outside of the Woodlands, just outside of Houston, that they found all of the missile carriers. Yeah, none of them had engines in them. Very difficult to move a 6-pack, as they call it, the missile unit, without an engine. It was a decommissioned facility that they had stored all of these military vehicles in. Someone drove by, saw it, and started the panic.
And Bluebell's selling ice cream again.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
All right, Eric, thank you for being with us. Greatly appreciate that. Eric, give your phone number out, if you would.
I'd be happy to. My telephone number, if anybody's got any questions, if you see anything,
Sure.
don't hesitate. I prefer not between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., but if it's critical, call me. My number is 830-92, I'll go slow, I see him just getting a pen. 830-928-6887. I will never scoff. I have people, like I say, all over the state of Texas. If your friends are in Beaumont and they see something and they call you, love to have a picture. But even if we can't get a picture, I can get on the horn and start people looking and figure out what it is.
Do you have a website and Facebook page?
We do have a Facebook page. There is one just for Texas, just for residents in Texas. Counter Jade Helm, Texas. You can search it on Facebook. It is closed. Send a request in. I get those requests. I verify that you live in Texas, and I'll let you onto that page. Other than that, there is an open page, counterjadehelm.info. All of our reports from the individual states go to Pete and his crew in Arizona. They set them up in proper format and then post them on the website.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.